I'm telling you, I'm still canceled. In many ways, I'm still censored. And so you can't call your show uncensored if you're censoring the most censored person. So I complained about that a lot. After the Tucker interview, they started talking about me like every week. I think they did like 7 shows, 5 or 6 shows about me since I did my interview with Tucker. And they would have a panel discussion about me while I'm banned from the show. So they're debating each other. Should he have a platform? Should he not? Should Tucker have talked to him? What did he do wrong? And I'm not allowed to engage. I'm not allowed to speak for myself or jump in. And so I called Piers Morgan out on my show a couple weeks ago. I said, how many shows is he going to do where he talks about me, but he won't talk to me? I said, because that doesn't seem fair. And so around Thanksgiving, he challenged me to come on the show. He said, you're right. It's about time. I'm going to talk to you. And he invited me on the show. And I got in touch with his producer, and we set it up very quickly, scheduled it for Monday. And I said last week that I expected it to be hostile. I said I was expecting an ambush. And then I corrected myself. I said it's not going to be an ambush because I know that it's going to be hostile. So with an ambush, there's an element of surprise. I said, it's not an ambush because there's no surprise. I said, I know exactly what I'm in for. And this morning or last night, I think it was, I'm not sure. They reassured me. They said, no, it's going to be live. It's going to be a live interview, 2 hours, one-on-one, no gimmicks. And I said, great. I think that's great. I was glad that it was live, because then I can be confident that it won't be edited or censored, or they're not going to mess with it in production. I said, that's fine. And so we do the interview. And like I said, it wasn't an ambush, but it was the usual Piers Morgan tabloid routine. He played all my clips, all the greatest hits, and basically asked me if I agreed with myself. That was the premise of the show. It was another clip show, and if you've been following me, you know what this is. You know how this goes. It's not the first one. I've been subjected to this many times. You go into the interview, and they play a clip for you, and they cut it out of context. They take 10 seconds, whatever it is, and they'll take something that's supposed to be a joke or it's rhetorical or whatever, and then they treat you like you're in a police interrogation. They treat you like you're in a courtroom.
Officer Piers Morgan. No, but what Nick is saying here, this is so true. And again, guys, was it not like an amazing interview? I'm still like hyped up about it. But what Nick just said here, this is so true. Like Piers Morgan, he took like those clips completely out of context, and then he was asking Nick, do you agree with what you just said here? And Nick is like, yeah, like I'm the one who said this. Like, of course I agree with myself. So this was like kind of weird. It didn't seem like Piers Morgan was very interested about like Nick's opinion. It more felt like he was constantly like attacking him. But was it not an amazing interview, guys? And believe me, this video is even gonna be more interesting because Nick is gonna expose, roast, destroy Piers Morgan even more, however you want to call this. And this is, believe me, guys, let's continue.
And they say, you submitted that on the record. And they act like you swore under oath that everything you've ever said is serious. And we all are familiar with that. They play the greatest hits, the things that sound the worst, and they ask you to defend it. And it's funny because I heard people explain it this way. They said he's playing you clips from your own show and then asking you if you agree with yourself. It's like, of course I'm going to agree with myself. He plays a clip and then says, what did you mean by that? And I'm like, well, I meant what I said in the clip. Well, did you take that back? No, I said, it's my show. I said it on my show. Of course I agree with the clip. I said it. It's on my show. And so that was the structure. That was the format. Clip, response, clip, response. And I guess what was notable about it is that he was clearly going into this interview thinking, I have to assume this. He went into it thinking that I would be embarrassed or ashamed or that he could shame me. And so he'll play a clip where I say, should be in prison, women need to shut up, are running America. And he thinks that I'm going to blush and get red in the face and go, oh, I didn't mean it that way. I'm not racist. I'm actually a really good guy. And I think he was surprised when I said, yeah, everything I said in that clip is true. And he said, really? Everything? Yeah. What about this part? Yeah, that too. Really? You think blacks should be in jail? Yeah, they commit too much crime. Well, white people commit crime. Yeah, they do it less. But they commit crime. Yeah, but less. But they commit crime. Yeah, but proportionally less. Okay, next subject. And this was the flow of the interview.
This is so true. And you can say whatever you want about Nick. You can agree with him. You can disagree with him. This is all fine. But you can't say that this guy, the way how he debated Piers Morgan, it was actually very good. Nick did a very good job, to be honest. Again, this is my opinion. Correct me if I'm wrong. But I actually believe that Nick did a very good job. He stood his ground, so respect for that. And again, all these things, Piers Morgan was already not the smartest guy, I feel like. I feel like he was not the best interviewer as well. But now he made a completely fool of himself, right? Just the way how he interviewed Nick, it was so weird. He made some good points as well, don't get me wrong. But bro, he could have done this way better, in my opinion. He got Nick finally on the show, and then he did all these weird interrogations. Exactly, bro.
And I say that I have to assume this because he started out the interview with the Coleman Hughes clip. And Coleman Hughes is this black guy. He's this black nerd at the Free Press. I had never heard of him. Apparently, he's very important to himself. And they play this clip from Coleman Hughes. He's at the Free Press. And for those that don't know, Free Press is Barry Weiss's publication. Barry Weiss is an Israeli spy. She went to Columbia University. Well, actually, before she did that, she graduated high school and then went to Israel. Graduated high school, then did a fellowship in Israel. Went to Columbia, started a pro-Israel campus group where she tried to get professors fired for being in favor of Palestine. It was called the David Project and Columbia Unbecoming. Funnily enough, she was in the same group as Bronze Age Pervert. Costin Alamaru, Bronze Age Pervert. He went to Columbia at the same year, and he worked on the same project, the same pro-Israel thing with Barry Weiss. Just a fun tidbit. After she graduated, Barry Weiss went back to Israel, and she did another fellowship under Yoram Hazony. She came back to the United States and started working for Bret Stephens, who is a Jewish editorialist for the Wall Street Journal at the time. Bret Stephens used to write for the Jerusalem Post before that. So he was her mentor, and then took her to the New York Times. And then after the New York Times, she started Free Press. So she is a trained Israeli propagandist. That's why she was in Israel. She was in Israel in high school, after college, in college, at Wall Street Journal, at New York Times. She is a trained Israeli propagandist, and that's what the Free Press is. And she was in the news lately because David Ellison, the son of Larry Ellison, bought her publication for $100 and some million and then made her the editor-in-chief of CBS. And now CBS is extremely pro-Israel. All their news reporting about Israel talks about how Hamas are terrorists and Israel's defending itself. And anyway, that's where this is coming from, just so you understand. And it's important to understand this for later in the story. So this Coleman Hughes, he's at Free Press. It's a pro-Israel propaganda outlet. And he does this video where he explains my strategy. And he says that when I'm on my show, I have one persona where I'm an extremist and a fanatic and I'm crazy and I'm hateful. He says, and then I go on an interview and I act moderate and I pretend like I'm a moderate, sensible, reasonable person and I act polite and I'm nice and all this. He says, and that's the conceit, is that I'm doing a charm offensive. I'm pretending to be a nice guy. And then when I become dictator of America, I'm going to take the mask off and become the second Hitler.
Whoa, dude, like, what did he just say? But I mean, like, I like Nick, I support Nick, and he makes some good point. But I also have to say this, it's kind of true what these people are saying. It is, like, kind of true that Nick is, like, once he goes to these interviews, he's acting, like, super nice, not so controversial, like, very friendly. And the moment he is on his own show like this, he is, like, it looks like he's sometimes, like, a different guy. So I have to give them a point. They make some good points, but that doesn't say everything about Nick. But I mean, like, I also agree a little bit that Nick is acting different on his own show than he is acting there. But of course, like, that's normal, right? I understand that he can't say the things what he is saying in his own show sometimes that he can't say this there. But I just wanted to say this because I'm also not a hypocrite. So what Nick or what they said, it's like kind of like true.
And I said this to Piers Morgan. I said, you know, first of all, he's a propagandist. Second of all, I said, my show is entertainment. I do a monologue, and it's funny, and it's rambunctious, and it's provocative. I said, and then when I do an interview, I explain my views in a serious and persuasive way. I said, that's not dishonest. That's just, we speak in an indoor voice when we're inside. We speak in an outdoor voice when we're outside. We talk to our parents one way, we talk to our male friends another way. That's just basic communication. I said, but the last part, which is that I'm going to seize power and then become Hitler, I said, I don't even know where that comes from. That just sounds totally crazy. That just sounds like it sounds like a Hollywood script. Nick Fuentes becomes president, then there's another Holocaust. I said, I'm not even going to engage with that. But he brought that up at the beginning of the interview. And the reason I say this is because in his mind, I think he thought that he was going to distill or break down the two personas. In his mind, all the other interviews, I'm being given softball questions and I'm being allowed to come across as reasonable. I'm being allowed to play the moderate and play the nice guy. And I'm doing this cynically, and the interviewer is letting me get away with it. And the public is getting this impression that I'm a really moderate guy. So in his mind, he's thinking, I'm going to play the clips from the show during the interview where he's trying to be the moderate. And he is going to have to deal with the contradiction of being a radical on the show, but attempting to appeal to a more moderate audience on my interview. So he starts out with the Coleman Hughes statement like this, and then he starts playing the clips. Okay, well, what about this from your show? What about that? And I'm sure he was expecting that if he's getting interviewed, Nick, that I'm going to try to wiggle my way out of that. I'm going to try and weasel my way out and say, oh, I didn't mean that. Oh, I don't know what I said. You know, I'm going to try and do something like that. And instead, I just said, yeah, no, I agree with that clip. And I agree with it completely. And that is what caught him off guard. And I think the biggest moment came when he said very early on, he said, so you're racist. Are you racist? And I said, yes, I am racist. Sure, I accept it. Call me a racist. And throughout the interview, I think once that happened, it was over. Because the entire purpose of the interview is to basically say the rhetoric on your show is racist. Do you know that? The rhetoric on your show is misogynistic. Do you know that? Do you deny that? And once I accepted it and said, yes, I'm racist, I'm misogynistic. Now what? Okay, I'm racist. I don't care. I'm not ashamed. I won't even deny it. Now what? Now what do you have to say? Okay, congratulations. You did it. He said on Twitter before, he said, we're going to give a proper examination of his views. And I knew what that meant. I knew what was coming. He said, you're racist, aren't you? Admit it. I'm like, yeah, I am.
Okay, like seriously, you need to have some balls of steel to say these things. And for this, he earns my respect. Like, seriously, Nick admitting all these things, and I'm not saying that you have to agree with it or you can disagree with it. This is all fine. You can decide this for yourself. But you can deny that, like, Nick has some balls of steel to just admit these things, these opinions in this show. Because don't get me wrong, like, I believe millions of people watch Piers Morgan's show. I mean, like, this one for sure. Like, Piers Morgan versus, like, Nick Fuentes. Millions of people will watch this interview. And Nick just said, yeah, I admit that. Yeah, I actually think like this. And you could also see the moment when he said that, like, Piers Morgan was, like, freaking out. Because he was like, oh, I didn't expect this. I didn't expect this. But, like, bro, what I don't understand, how is it possible that we got... Nick Fuentenstein versus like Piers Plant Morgan before GTA 6. That's kind of weird. Like, right? But anyway, let's go.
I am. Now what? And what about that? Now what? And he had nothing. Nothing. And throughout the interview, he's restating it in new ways, restating it in novel ways over and over. But you see, you said you're racist earlier, but you see, you've conceded you're racist. Does the audience know, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, he is racist? And I said, congratulations. Congratulations, you've succeeded. Yes. And I don't know why you're so proud of yourself. I don't know why you're patting yourself on the back. This is something I've said on my show. It's something I've said in interviews. I said it to Candace Owens' face. Right before I explained human biodiversity, right before I explained race and IQ, I told her, yes, I'm racist. I said, you know, I used to say I'm racialist. Now I just say I'm racist. I don't care. I said, so I don't know why you're patting yourself on the back. And once I said that, it was over. Because he had nothing. There was no moral high ground. He couldn't shame me. And there was nothing substantive to say other than to point and sputter, you're a racist, you're misogynistic. And there's a lesson in this, which is that these words and these labels, and more than that, the shame, it only has as much power over you as you give it. Now, I understand that for normal people, there's a little more to the story, because if you get called a racist, you could lose your job. You could be expelled from school. Your wife or your girlfriend might leave you. Your family might disown you. So for other people, there are complications. But for people like myself, and I consider myself an opinion maker, a tastemaker, a public intellectual, an influencer, whatever you want to say. I'm an ideas person. My job is in the realm of ideas. I don't have a regular employer. For someone like myself to say, that word doesn't have power over me, I don't care. You can call me that. Once that happens, it's like a spell is broken. And the rest of it followed suit. So that's in the first place. I also want to talk about that whole approach, because what was really interesting to me, and we could go over some of the greatest hits, I'm sure we'll hear about it in the super chats, but I'm assuming you've all seen it or you've seen the viral clips. What was interesting to me about the interview is that he seemed to think in the middle of it, before, during, and after the engagement, that he was winning. Because during the interview, he kept saying, well, the audience is going to judge. Well, the viewers at home will decide. Thinking in his mind that they're eating this up, that the audience at home is folding their arms and saying, well, he's done it. Piers got him to admit he's racist. That's it. That's all we need to see. It's over. I don't need to hear any more. He's racist, and that's all I needed to hear. That's it. And so during the interview, he kept falling back on this. Well, the audience can decide. It's sort of smugly. And even after the interview, on Twitter, is treating it like this was some grand victory. But if you looked at the comments, all the comments on Instagram, on X, on YouTube, they're all positive. People thought it was funny. People said I was logical. People said they found themselves agreeing with me. Or if they disagreed, they said they didn't find me all that extreme. They said that Piers was being dishonest and malicious. They said he's a liberal boomer. They said some of what he said was ridiculous, that he was angry.
And this is so true. Like, I believe maybe 98% of the comments, they were all in favor of Nick Fuentes. Like, but this happens with almost every video of Piers Morgan. Believe me, you should, like, after this video, you can take a look at the comments. It's actually jokes. There were some very funny comments in there as well. But most are like, when Piers Morgan interviews someone, like always 95%, same as with Andrew Tate, is in interview with Andrew Tate, like 98% of the comments are like against Piers Morgan and they are like in favor of the guest. And then you should ask yourself, if you're Piers Morgan yourself, dude, am I doing a good job or do I actually have to change something? Because I feel like not many people, they actually like, they don't think that Piers Morgan is like a good interviewer. I don't even understand why he is so why so many people like to watch his show. Probably because of his guest, but I'm not interested in Piers Morgan at all. Like, he is very overrated in my opinion. And like, if you correct me if I'm wrong, but like, do you guys, are you interested in Piers Morgan? Piers Plant Morgan? No, right? Like, he asks like the most weird questions. He never let his guests speak. He always interrupts his guests. Same as with Nick. Nick said multiple times, "Excuse me, is my mic working? What is up with the interruptions? Like, do you not hear me?" This was also very funny. But like, I don't know why so many people like, okay, long story short, I have no clue why Piers Morgan has almost like, I don't know how many million of subscribers does he has? 5 million? 6 million? Why? Probably because of his guests, of course, but like, Piers Morgan, dude, I'm curious about your opinion about Piers Morgan. I will just shut up, but I'm curious, what is your opinion about Piers Morgan? Please share your opinion in the comments as well. Very important to say, I read all comments, so I can't wait for your comments about Piers Morgan. I'm very interested.
And I think there's sort of a corollary to this, which is, I have been pushing this message for 10 years. And I have been dealing with hostile interviews like this for just as long. And I have been dealing with these clip shows for just as long too. At the end of the interview, he asked me how I thought it went. I said, "You think you're the first one to do this? You thought this was a novel approach? You think this is the first time someone has played a clip out of context and asked me to explain it?" I said, "Take a number and get to the back of the line. I've experienced this many times." And what's funny is, in my niche internet community, and maybe more broadly, my generation, this engagement between Zoomers and Boomers, it's been happening. It happened. It happened years ago. And what I mean by that is, maybe this is just reaching Piers Morgan now. But 5, 6 years ago, people like me were saying to their parents and other edgelords on Twitter and other people, other intellectuals in private were saying to equally as confused boomers, "Yeah, I'm racist. I don't care." In other words, this is something that has already happened in the past tense. We have been in a post-racist conversation for years. It happened quietly. It happened privately. It happened among the younger generation. It happened on the internet. It happened years ago, where people said, including myself and many other occasions, said, "You know what? Fine, we're racist. You can call me that. We don't care. We're comfortable with it. We want to have the conversation. And we're not going to be held back by the labels and the shaming and the grandstanding and all the rest." And it's funny that it has taken so many years for that concept to travel to the legacy media where Piers Morgan is. He's just finding out now. This is maybe the first time he's encountered this. I have to believe that because I go on his show at the end of 2025. It's almost 2026. And he's telling me, "You're racist." Okay, I don't care. Well, it's over for you. The audience is going to hate that. And it's like, no, hate to break it to you, the audience is with me. And that's just it. That strategy of calling people racist, sexist, anti-Semitic, that had currency 10 years ago. That had power in 2015. Because in 2015, you could gesture to the audience and appeal to those sensibilities, and it would have been a knockout blow. If you could convince an audience that someone is a racist, or even if you make the charge that somebody is a racist, if someone identifies as a racist, the audience is against you.
I mean, I get the point Nick is trying to make here, and it is actually like a good point. I agree with him a little bit on this one, because it's so true. And don't get me wrong, you can still have like racist people, like even in 2025, of course, but it's kind of true that like so many of these labels, sexism, racism, anti-Semitism, they have been used so many times that they almost like lose their value a little bit, or excuse me, I hope I'm saying it correctly, but that if you use it so many times, they don't have as much power anymore. Like, I hope you get the point, but this is so true. And like, now we live in 2025. If you constantly call people like a racist, then it doesn't say a lot anymore at this point. And again, I want to make this very clear. You still have some people who are like this, of course. Those are like horrible people. But it doesn't make sense if like someone, for example, criticize other people, that you can instantly call him a racist. Like, no, that's so wrong. And I felt like Piers Morgan did this a little bit. Like, he never even actually listened to what Nick Fuentes had to say. And this is why I'm so annoyed with Piers Morgan all the time. He looks a little bit like Steven Crowder, like, or Alex Jones. He's like asking 20 million questions, or like he is even like saying that the worst things about you, and then when you want to reply, then he's constantly interrupting you. I hate this. Like, if you like say some bad things about someone, then at least give someone else like the time and to like explain himself. But Piers Morgan didn't do this. He was constantly interrupting Nick Fuentes, very annoying, and it seems like he didn't even care about like Nick's opinion. He just wanted to attack him over and over again, to just show the crowd, look, I'm a good guy, I'm a Piers Morgan, I'm a good guy. Kind of weak, bro, kind of weak.
And the person accusing you has the moral high ground. You could gesture to the audience and that would be enough. Oh, well, I've done it. You see here, I've accused him of being a racist. And that, like I said, that had a currency with most people a long time ago. But that isn't the case anymore. It was like that, but it's not anymore. Now it's the opposite. And what Piers and Tucker and the rest of them don't understand is that I am extremely popular. And I'm not extremely popular because the economy's bad. I hate to tell you that. I hate to break it to you. They all want to tell the story that the only reason I'm popular is because of disaffected young white males can't enter the job market because housing prices are out of control. I'm extremely popular, and it ain't because of the job market. Okay? I became popular this year because this is the first year that I was completely uncensored. I became popular this year because in the intervening 3 or 4 years when I was censored, everybody got radicalized. Everybody got radicalized at home when they were locked down during the pandemic, and they watched the BLM riots, and they saw the lies from the mainstream media about the vaccine and about the virus itself, and they saw the Ukraine war, and they saw the Biden administration and what they attempted to foist on us, how they tried to jam that down our throats and tell us everything's okay. People in the past few years have gotten black fatigue, Israel fatigue, woke fatigue, everything you want to say. In the intervening 3 years, when I was banned, everybody caught up with me. Everybody got as radical as me, so that by the time I became uncensored, it was a match. By the time I became uncensored, there was a general public that had an appetite for it already. I maybe didn't even necessarily make them red-pilled. I didn't make them racist, sexist, the rest of it. They were those things. They had an appetite for those things. They had those feelings. They had those thoughts. And then I was allowed on Instagram, and I simply said them out loud. And for that, I became extremely popular this year. And again, not because they're mad about jobs.
No, of course not. And this is a very good point Nick makes here. And you should ask yourself this question. Why do you think that so many people now support Nick Fuentes? It has nothing to do with the jobs. It has nothing to do with the economy. This is all BS. Like, seriously, I always used to say this. And I don't understand the people who don't understand that Nick Fuentes is becoming so popular now. Because you have so many people who feel like betrayed. They feel like they are ignored for so long. And then you have a guy like Nick Fuentes. I always used to call him like the voice of the silenced people, because believe me, there are many people who think like this, but they don't hear this voice in the mainstream media. So Nick is actually like saying the things where many people agree with, where many people actually also think about, but they don't hear many people talk about this. And then Nick is saying these things, and this is the reason why they like to listen to a Nick. But the same goes for a Candace, the same goes for a Tucker Carlson, but Nick is a little bit more extreme, a little bit more intense, however you want to call this. So like, of course he's gaining a lot of followers because he is talking about these things what you don't hear in the mainstream media. People, they won't talk about it, and Nick does. So this is the reason why many people probably like Nick. But again, this is my opinion. Like, maybe I'm wrong. Correct me if I'm wrong. Feel free to debate me. I'm very curious about your opinion. Like, seriously, like, do you agree with Nick? Do you disagree with Nick? Please share your opinion in the comments. It's very important to say I try to read all comments. I even try to reply to all of your comments. So I'm always very curious about how you guys think. Last but not least, guys, if you like this video, please hit the like button. If you really like this video, consider subscribing. I would really appreciate it. I'm on my way to the 50,000 subscribers. I can't believe we almost reached it. Thank you guys so much for everything, the likes, the comments, just all the love you give me. I really appreciate it. You guys are the best. I could not do this without you. So thank you guys. And last but not least, before I forget this, I wish you all the best. Have a wonderful day, and I'll see you in the next one. Ciao!